Excuse me. All right, so this is my third time on Instagram Live today. We are finishing the day out with punctual. That's a good sign. Very good. That's huge. What's up, brother? All right, just sent the invite over to you, brother. How's it going?
Hey, what's up, brother? How are you?
I'm well. How are
I-
you?
I'm doing really well.
I'm
Doing really
happy to
well.
hear.
Can you hear me?
Yeah. For one, shout out to you being precisely on time. Like that kind of that language goes a long way for me. I just want to. It does. It does. It does.
We try to run a tight ship here. We have a
Yeah. And
lot to do.
I come from a professional filmmaking background, and like I'm all about
Mm,
like call times and things like that nature. So whenever a person speaks that language, it just makes me really happy. Not to say that athletes and CPT time, like it all exists, and I acknowledge it, but I prefer this.
I try to live by to be early is to be early is to be on time. To be on time is to be late. To be late is unexcusable. I don't win every time, but you know,
Yeah,
when I do win, I try to I take the wins.
absolutely. And I could go on in detail, but this is not what we're here for. This is not what we're here for. So
Is it?
good, good. Hey, honestly, you might be onto something. So I've been looking forward to speaking with you since I came across your page a week or so ago. As I spoke to you, via DM, I'm I've become more aware within like the past couple of weeks that there's an issue that needs to be addressed, and I would like to understand what's being done now, and I would like to understand what we can do collectively to address these issues. So, with that being said, I kind of want to give the floor to you and get a better insight as to what you have been doing to help your patients or clients. How would you describe
uh, Community
your community?
clients. Yeah,
Yeah, I would love to understand how you're currently helping your community. Also, real quick, do you offer one-on-one?
I do. I
Okay,
do. Yeah, people can go to my website, roberthmarshall.com or iammaninc.org, and they can request one-on-one sessions. Actually, first session is free. So, hey,
okay,
yeah.
good to know. And another thing when it comes to one-on-one, I would love to better understand your range of services when it comes to therapy sessions.
Yeah. So what I do is I provide support for boys and men who experience adverse childhood and traumatic life experiences. My areas of specialties are fathers, fathers who grew up without fathers, um, underrepresented student groups, so student male students trying to navigate the educational system, whether that be, from kindergarten to post grad, boys and men who've experienced sexual trauma, and men who are navigating life out after incarceration.
Oh, okay,
And also male domestic violence survivors as well.
okay, okay. Let me throw one out at you. Let's say, I'm an athlete. Right now, my focus is on my athletes,
Yeah.
but I want to help everyone.
Okay.
Um, but my goal is to help my athletes and turn them into the best versions of themselves through proper
Yeah.
training, proper mindset, proper therapy, proper everything. I want to create an environment and a path for success, and
Yeah.
then show how that path can be replicated, not just for athletes, but for any individual who has aspirations of achieving great things.
Okay.
So let's say in this hypothetical scenario, I'm an athlete and I grew up in a disadvantaged environment. Okay. And it checks all the boxes. Let's say I'm an African American, grew up in just arbitrary Compton. I grew up in Compton. Um, didn't have a dad. Dad was out of the picture. Life was rough. Had to jump into a gang, because that was the culture and stuff like that. And now, as a result, I'm in my 30s and I got a chip on my shoulder. I think that society doesn't support me, and I'm looking at the rest of the world as if it's me against them.
Yeah.
Um, can you help with that?
Yes, of course. Um, so here's the framework for the work that I do. So those are areas of specialty, but we also do male empowerment sessions as well.
Okay.
So so healing is the journey, wholeness is the destination. For the work that we do, that's the framework. Helping reconcile boys and men to themselves, to the divine, and to their community. So walking alongside boys and men who've experienced a range of adverse childhood experiences or traumatic life experiences and helping them regain a sense of hope, right? Um, and also giving them the tools and the resources they need to journey to wholeness, one healing step at a time. And I'll say this, it is not our job to define what wholeness looks like. It's not our job to define what healing looks like. But oftentimes, it's what we've uh, we specialize in helping boys and men journey along the way. And as far as instances like this, that is actually a very typical space because a lot of times, black and brown, boys and men, they feel like their bodies are the epitome of their self worth, and so a lot of clients or community members that I see or have seen, they've been either former athletes who had the aspirations of going pro. They've been in shape their entire lives. Let's say they get injured really drastically, and boom, the dream is gone. Or they trained their entire life for this one thing, and now they're not there. And so they're living in a woulda, coulda, shouldas. They're mad at the world. They feel like, and a lot of them actually, unfortunately, sometimes choose to choose. They fall into what I call, this or they experience depression in such a way that they choose to, or they are deeply influenced to try to get away from living the life that now they are forced to live into, right? Go ahead.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I love that. I love that. And you're touching onto it, and I'm definitely on the same page with you. In response to depression
Yes.
that is caused by societal oppression
Yes.
that we kind of being born into. Um, okay, so here's the difficulty, and I'm sure since this is your life's work, you have some level of solution that I would love to collaborate with you on refining. But women or men of our circumstances, right? Just this, right? Or maybe even men as a whole, there's typically a lack of desire to be open about the things that we are feeling in so far as feeling oppressed, feeling depressed, feeling taken advantage of, feeling like our childhood was in
Yeah.
some way negative. Like we don't,
Yeah.
as men, want to talk about that. And as you and I both know, with our level of emotional intelligence and our expertise in helping people, you need to.
Yeah.
You can't overcome something unless you're really able to face it, acknowledge it, and have it resolved through therapy or some other means.
Right. So the truth is, underrested emotional development starts at a very early age for boys and men who come from spaces like we do, and that's that and meaning it starts as early by number one what we see, right? We could go all the way back to history, right? Where um, the where we are, if we go back to even slavery, if we wanted to, and not just slavery with black, but also indigenous cultures as well, and the level of oppression that men often face and our unhealthy working definitions of masculinity. Number one, in our spaces, historically, there was no definition of masculinity in the broader spectrum of black, being of black descent in America, right? You weren't even seen as human. You were seen as part human. And so what you thought, what you felt, all of that, it did not matter. All that mattered was survival. And so we then shape our worldview and the way we see the world through that lens, that we are from an early age, our grandfather, our great grandfather, grandfather, and father, and so on and so on. They were formed they were create they were their worldview and their understanding of who they were as men was restricted to this toxic, unhealthy definition that was actually not a part of the original narrative when it came from being African or African descent or even Native or indigenous descent.
Okay. Yeah. All right. So, couldn't agree more. All right. So, I'm definitely going to start labeling myself as a futurist. And I acknowledge the history and I acknowledge the past. However, I am not attached to it.
Limited. No, and let me say this. And I agree with you. And here's the thing, and this is where I was bringing on the long way
Hmm.
around,
Hmm.
where essentially right now, currently, as early as 2, 3 years old, boys are taught we are arrested in development, not allowed to, not don't cry, be quiet, get up, suck it up, man up, and
Hmm.
you go and we do these things. And so, and some boys are even met with some type of physical, some type of physical alter or hit or altercation to affirm, hey, you do not do this as a man. You are not, and psychologically, what we hear, the little boy in us, we hear, you are not allowed to feel. You are not allowed to express. You are not allowed to do these things. And so, as men, we are the range of emotions that we have. We are we are trained to be locked down and not given the freedom to explore the range of emotions that we have, unless it's sexual prowess, anger, right? And because those things often benefited other people, and so when or we're the joker in the space where we're the ones that are being laughed at. But as a futurist, and I'm here with you as well, because the past we are now there is an emerging, and there is this awareness that is coming forward within society now about redefining what it means to be a healthy man and to be an emotionally intelligent, competent man that is emerging from of the ashes of the past, and able to, and I tell men this all the time, taking your taking your power back to choose who you decide to be, who you, and what does this mean to you. There's this resurgence that is taking place where we do now have the choice to choose who you want to be and not settle for the version of you that was created in order to survive.
Mm.
So when it comes to that, I agree. I totally agree with you, because now we do have the power to choose who we decide to be.
Amen.
And what that does, it takes courage. And that is where the inner workings of real strength starts to be developed. And you start realizing, in order to build a strong man, it cannot just happen on the outside first. It has to you have to confront the internal system, structures, boundaries that are not serving where you're trying to go.
Right.
Um, yeah.
Right. All right. So beautiful. Thank you for saying that.
Oh,
All
mhm.
right. So we can attack this from two different angles. It's case by case. Obviously one on one in person and diving deep into their programming. I refer to it as programming, society's programming on our psyche, and how it's conditioned us to view the world a certain way, feel like we can only do so much. and it's intentional. It's done intentionally to keep us in a sort of subservient, limiting beliefs kind of perspective on what we can do in the world and like the things that we can, the impact that we can make. Right.
Correct.
So you can address that through positive reinforcement therapy and dealing with individuals one on one, or maybe public speaking and speaking to entire crowds. However, my whole thing is greatest storyteller of all time, telling the story of how humanity in this universe achieved world peace.
Mm,
And while we can lead a movement and speak to individuals individually, I myself, the way that I'm steering this narrative is a
yeah.
reboot of society structure, a reboot of the government systems in place, and basically changing the programming that is more inclusive and allowing for a greater amount of people to feel liberated and empowered to
Of
do
course.
whatever they want,
Of
live the
course.
life that they want. Right. So, keeping that in mind, what, where would we start from here? So far as empowering men to speak up for themselves, to be more open with their emotions. How do you suggest we start addressing that programming?
That's a good question. I think different people would have different answers to that. But here, if I was to take a stab at it, I would say number one, um, acknowledging that there's an issue with the programming that we currently have, that it's not working, and giving them the opportunity, space to come into self-discovery, right? I say this all the time: broken information leads to broken revelation, which means the broken manifestation. If I have the wrong information, I have the wrong that information is applied wrong, and I get a skewed view on that. Two, we as we deconstruct all allowing in this communal space, deconstructing all of the working definitions of things and stuff that no longer serves what we're trying to build, coming alongside each other individually, but also collectively to
Right.
respect and mutually honor each other, but also giving us the freedom to choose, right? To choose and to build according to the framework that we as a community decide, hey, this is what this is going to be. So it's individualistic, but it's also the individuals make up this unique space where every experience is seen, every voice is heard, and we humanize the lived experiences of all people who are in the collective.
Love that. Humanize, normalize.
Humanize.
Normalizing humanization.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Which is, I mean, it's kind of the exact opposite of what has been happening up until this
Of
point.
course.
Or
It's
what we've been doing is normalizing not being a human. It's
exactly.
normalizing being a consumer, normalizing buying products, normalizing not having emotion that's attached to a community,
Yeah.
but more so having emotion that's attached to dopamine
Yeah.
and chasing after feeling good about yourself through validation of purchasing
Yeah.
products.
Yeah.
It's
Correct.
consumerism.
Correct.
Okay. And the way to combat that is through community building.
Right. And in that community, I also, and I want to add this. So I will say number one, humanization. Number two, I would say creating safe spaces. And I know that that is a catchword, catchphrase we hear a lot about creating safe spaces. But what I mean by safe spaces, where if a man or if you feel safe in a space, right? Safety for me is not um, it is more of truth than it is fuzzy feelings, right? There's this safe space, oh, we're fuzzy, no. If when I, as a man, or I feel safe in a community, I'm able to hear the truth without offense, but also I'm able to get the information that is needed to push me into the future and who I can become when shaking the stuff off. So, for instance, if I have self sabotaging behaviors and I'm an alcoholic, even though I have the able to do that in this safe space. It can be confronted in love and grace, but also without the fluff of, oh, it's going to be all right. No, if you keep drinking, it will kill you. And you and hearing the truth in love space, and when I'm safe enough, right, I then have the opportunity to hear truth and then be transformed by
Mm,
truth.
mm.
Um,
I
and
like that.
there's a principle: the truth makes you free, right? The truth is, truth is a gangster, right?
Mm,
It really is. And this is why true friends or true safe spaces, especially among men, when you're really among your people, you be like, dude, you look stupid doing that, right? Dude, you look like a total, and you're able to speak truth in love, but that truth, that sword comes in to cut away at things that demean you and that could potentially bring harm to you. And a lot what we hear about now are fluffy, feel good, rah rah, and that's not true. People are not transformed by or they're lulled to sleep. Truth is transformative. Truth is confrontational. It's the principle is truth makes you free. It snatches all of the things and it pulls you out of those low places that demean and demine your greatness and who you were created to be.
I love that. You're speaking my language, and it sounds like the tricky part. I mean, maybe you can give me some perspective on that. How difficult is it to create a safe space for a man to be vulnerable, specifically a man who is not used to being vulnerable? How what is that like? How do we do that? And how do we do that on a massive scale?
Yeah. So, number one, if I knew how to do that on a massive scale, I think I would be making a lot of money. I wouldn't give that away
Well,
for free.
that's why we're here. That's why we're here.
I
I
would
got
give,
ideas.
but I think, how do we do that on a massive scale? I'm interested to hear your ideas first on
I
this.
got you. You want me to start?
Yes, let's start. Let's go
Okay. All right. Let me know if I like. Feel free to ask any kind of questions. Okay.
for sure.
All right. So I'll give you the game plan. Um, we're going to be launching an app along with a manifesto, which I'm referring to as like an onboarding manual. The app is called Exceed, but essentially the idea is to create an AR video game, actual reality, where people get initiated to play the great game and join a global network of people who are focused on achieving world peace in this
Yeah,
lifetime.
yeah,
Through that network, they have access to all different individuals who are living the best versions of themselves, sort of on like a leveling up system where every day you wake up and you are pursuing the best version of yourself mentally, physically, and spiritually. And you are focused on developing the three skills: self belief, imagination, and focus. So, those are like your top priorities on a daily basis. And if you prioritize those things, you automatically level up due to the fact that you are constantly evolving. Keeping that in mind, I want to basically take over the world through three separate phases or three separate reboots, starting with the fitness industry, where we would reboot the fitness industry and replace the glorification of steroids and cosmetic surgeries, enhancements, and the quick fix solutions to looking good but not really
these
being
are
healed internally. We would replace that with natural athletes and natural heroes who have faced their fears, who have faced their trauma, and have achieved their evolution through natural ways by prioritizing physical, mental, and spiritual growth,
yeah,
right? So we focus on those individuals first within this reboot of the fitness industry and promote them to superstar status, the likes of which bodybuilding, for one, has never seen, and that is comparable to the likes of your favorite stars in NBA, soccer, baseball. We bring them up to that same level. By installing these individuals as role models within the fitness industry first, we can point to clear examples of an individual who has faced their trauma and has been
yeah,
able to grow and evolve as a result of facing their darkest history. Then we will be moving into rebooting the entertainment industry slash Hollywood, where basically we would take the same blueprint of turning people into superstars within their chosen profession. First, it was with natural bodybuilding. Now we've gone on to the second phase where we can focus on the world at large, where we're actually telling stories in the format of movies, TV shows, books, and things of that nature. Same exact format. Everyone's playing the great game and leveling up, only it's a doctor, it's a therapist. Yeah, you get it?
Mm,
It is a life coach, it's a musician, it's an artist, and they're all going through their own process of evolution while telling their specific story that is, aligned with their passion and their
yeah.
focus. And then the last reboot after, and by now we're like probably 5 years in the future, we've expanded a huge network of individuals, artists, politicians, diplomats, things of that nature. And then the final reboot would be rebooting the world, where that's the one that takes the longest amount of time because we have to literally connect with as many people who are initiated into this directive of achieving world peace and also offering a new programming to the way that the world is designed.
Mm, mm. Yes, sir.
But the whole
Yes.
time we would be displaying leaders by example through content in the form of films, television, and things of that nature.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah.
Did that
Yeah.
make sense?
Powerful. It is powerful.
Nice.
Wow.
What
Wow.
comes to mind at like because this is the first time I've ever like really explained it out loud in that
I I
concise of a way.
I think it is, and my mind is processing it. First of all, I want to say, dude, you are brilliant.
Thank you.
By the way, you are brilliant, and um, so I would say number one, I think tackling or going for the things that influence culture, that impact culture, building a system, building or readdressing or revitalizing systems through the means that you're talking about. I think number one, I think that's very smart. I would also add, I would ask, um, I'm looking at kind of as a top-down approach, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I would also wonder what could we do from the bottom up, because oftentimes top down is cool, but when institutions have been established for so long and you have people at the bottom of the institutions who either refuse change or fight change, right? What what would that resurgence need to look like,
Yes.
or from the bottom up?
Yeah, I got it. We would have to change the value of currency. So right now, like the typical value is money, right, and monetary. However, if we change the narrative and start putting currency in communal love and support, then we can actually establish a greater emphasis on the value of community and show that through that emphasis and that value, we're actually able to achieve the type of goals that we have in mind for ourselves and feel more fulfilled as a whole due to the fact that we've created this kind of support group where if you think about it, if you have 1,000 people, right, and they all have like varying degrees of money in their bank account, but they're all like, hey, we want you to win. What do you need from me to make
Yeah,
sure that you win in your respective desire? Then you're a millionaire. You don't need $1 million in your bank account. What you need are a million friends
right,
who have $1, you
right.
know? So it's basically realigning the emphasis of where is value coming from. Value is no longer coming from money. Obviously, we all need money to like work and like, we have to pay our rent and food and stuff like that. But the true value comes from the community of people that we are establishing right now that are looking to see you win, that are looking to see me win. That's where the currency comes from. Communal
Yeah.
love.
Yeah. Well, and if we're going to do that, and even if that's the new currency, what we still need the current currency that we're talking about that you just mentioned that we may need, because at that point, that may not, as far as money as we know it, there
Hmm.
would be a currency because there would be new values. Money is just the exchange of energy through material. And
Yes.
so if that is changing and it is a new there's a new ecosystem, there's a new value
Yeah.
system that is being established,
Yes.
then would you really need that then?
You
So
you you yeah, you mentioned you bring up a very good point, and that's something I would be happy. I mean, obviously, like you understand, I'm a long term planner, so I'm totally open to discussing that and figuring out like what serves us best. And the way that I want this to play out is there's a political structure system called syndicalism, where basically the political system of syndicalism focuses on established experts at the top of their respective fields, offering their perspective on what they should do within their industry or field to help make the world a better place. And I mean, there's so many different fields like herbology, space travel, diplomacy, trauma, like we would have representatives from every specific area of expertise, and we would get them to weigh in on what changes within their industry need to be applied in order to make the world a better place. And
Mm,
that's what the rebooting of the world is supposed to look like. Hundreds of people in varying degrees of expertises, passions, all appointed by the people in that industry to lead a movement of change.
okay. I'm gonna have to chew on that. But yeah, I wonder what would be those who are at the top making those decisions or, giving their points of view, would their points of view be subjective, right? And how we are forming and how we are creating and what value and what we should like and how we should move depending upon their experience and uh their professional point of view. Like,
Yeah. So I would say that the trick would be, because to me, the concept of subjectivity is not offensive to me because I feel like I'm not very prejudiced or biased against any specific group of human, but that's just
that's
me.
right.
The vision would be that we would only raise people to levels of strong leadership within their respective fields, whether it be an athlete or an actor or a filmmaker, what have you. But the people that we are looking to promote as the stars, as like those leaders within their respective fields, they are so damn passionate about the thing that they're passionate about that they rule out racism, they rule out prejudices, and they just focus on the thing that lights them up. And like that's what the great game is supposed to. That's supposed to be the new programming. What's the point in being racist if it has nothing to do with your passion? What's the point in being sexist or anti-feminist or homophobic? If is it getting you closer to your specific goal of being the greatest blank, then what's the value of having it in your brain? And like that's really the new programming that I'm looking to introduce to society.
So the elimination of fear,
Correct.
essentially.
Correct. Yeah, through community, because we're all doing it. I think people are afraid to do things on their own, and I acknowledge that. I accept it. I get it. It's scary. It's scary to do things on your own. So to install leaders who are leading by example, who are doing great things. Take Shaun Fury for example, creating the Natty King, becoming the greatest natural bodybuilder of all time, and showing that it can be done while still having fun, while still leading a movement, while still creating a community that are all beneficial to the larger picture for humanity as a whole.
So then, okay. So as it relates to capacity, when it comes to this, how would we determine, how would we navigate varying levels of capacity when it
Mm.
comes to being able to do these things?
I love that. That's actually a pretty good question. Um, yeah, so I don't like hierarchies. Um, I just don't. I don't like them, and I don't know if they're intrinsic to human society. I don't. I'm not convinced. In fact, there are past human civilizations that did not rely on hierarchical structures in order to maintain and sustain themselves. And then the colonists come over and get them sick, and they all fucking die, which is terrible.
Right.
So the way I see it, it's kind of like a master and apprentice type of scenario where it's like if we have like this huge world, we have different cities, different environments, we would install leaders, not so much for the fact of like this person's better than the next person, but this person is the most efficient. This person is the best example for them doing their job at the highest level. So this is an example of who to aspire to if you have a similar passion in that specific field. So like that's kind of how we do it. Like there are star players across the board. Right now, the best basketball player to ever play the game is Michael Jordan, right? So now whenever a player comes into the NBA, they're either aiming to be like Mike or surpass Mike. I mean, that should be the goal. Some people just want to get into the NBA and get paid, which is like that's an entirely other thing, and then we can work on that later. But for the individuals who want to do great things and live out their passion, we have role models for them, and their existence is to be that, just that, a role model for you to look up to and figure out how can I get to their level or surpass them. And obviously we're talking specifically about like ambitious, confident individuals who have that drive in them to compete with their favorite role models, but those are the individuals that I'm looking to reach first, and through that community that we forge, they will be able to lead a movement that changes the world.
Okay, I'm here for it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I, man, you got my mind thinking.
I love
So
that.
yeah,
Yeah, we like thinking. Yeah. So
we do like thinking.
yeah, and we just went over the big 10 to 20-year plan. We can go back to we can get grounded and go back to like what the forecast looks like for like the next year or so. And like we've already broken it down in rebooting the fitness industry first, then rebooting Hollywood, and then rebooting the world. Going back to the fitness industry, I've only been a bodybuilder. I've only been a storyteller of this movement for like the past 2 years at most. And even in that short amount of time, I have been exposed to athletes that have had traumatic experiences in their childhood.
Yeah.
And I'm sort of being brought to awareness of this being an issue. Myself, I was raised in an upper middle class environment. My father was the mayor of his hometown, and then he was a lawyer. So, like, I never really struggled. I wasn't really exposed to trauma at all in my life. So, I'm coming from a place of complete shock and disillusionment
That's
of the
beautiful.
fact that, yeah, yeah. So like that's my primary focus right now. And after being exposed and meeting you prior, it was like, oh man, this story is going to be great. It's going to get told. I'm going to be the greatest storyteller of all time. It's awesome, right? Now I do actually have a sense of urgency to get the message out, get the story told as quickly and efficiently as possible, due to the fact that I now have this awareness that there are people who are suffering due to the things that they've experienced or the things that they are currently experiencing. And I want to help those people as quickly as possible.
Wow. Yeah, I just heard you. I'm listening to what you just said, and I think it's very beautiful because I think about the wavelength, the way that you think and the way that you're processing, and you're thinking 20, 30 years down the road. And I think, and to hear you say, I was not aware of trauma. I did not experience these things, but that also gives your mind the ability to think freely and
Well, I'm
not
glad that you picked
think
up
in
on that.
survival. Yeah,
I'm very glad that you picked up on that.
and not and not think about survival
And
and that way.
and that's where my frustration is coming from, because I understand the freedom that my mind has in relation to thinking about anything. I can literally take my brain and jump over to Jupiter and build an entire world there and figure out how I would tell that cool story over in civilization in Jupiter. But people are being robbed of that ability due to their trauma. Instead, they're being forced to relive experiences in their life that is preventing them from living a more fulfilled life. And that's a huge issue with me, because I believe in the potential of human evolution. And if society and the things that society is programming in us to behave and treat others in a certain way is preventing us from that evolution, it is my job and responsibility to address it as quickly as possible. because I don't want to be the one who's just having the fun. I want all of us to be having fun.
I'm listening to you, and I don't know whether to cry or to. I, I, I'm listening to you because I'm hearing you say I want you to have fun. I want us all to be able to have fun. I want us all to be able, and that's great. And I'm thinking a lot of men. Have you ever read the book The Body Keeps the Score?
I've heard of it. Yeah, I've heard of
Yes.
it.
So the body keeps the score. Long story short, it's the principle of how trauma impacts the body. When somebody experiences some form of traumatic experience, it stamps you. It stamps various dimensions of an individual. So as you, let's say at the age of 5, something happens. Let's say dad leaves, right? For instance, dad leaves. You're now home as a single mom, or you're raised by a single mom, or somebody dies, right? You are now that what trauma does, it stamps you in that moment, and
Exactly.
it inhibits that person from emotionally growing beyond that space. They continue to physically grow, but they are stuck in a cycle in that space, and I and it's very and when they're used to, I call it like this, when they are discipled in dysfunction, or they are if they have this limp, this issue, this defect, it becomes the norm. It becomes the worldview. It becomes how they show up. It's not it's a part of them because they don't know what life has been without it. And I think it's very, not to say that it can't be dealt with, but I'm a firm believer that trauma has to be healed, right? Trauma has to be healed. It is not something that you can will away. It is not something that you can pray away, or that you can any of these things. Trauma has to be healed, and it has to be healed in such a way where, and there's different philosophies on different types of healing or journeying or whatnot. But at the end of the day, it has to be acknowledged, it has to be healed, it has to be addressed, it has to be understood, right? It has to be understood to move forward. The challenge is that a lot of times most men don't have freedom to to even begin that journey. A lot of
Yeah,
times, because I'm not one, I'm a firm believer that you can create the life that you want to,
of
right?
course.
I've come from that. I've come from the gutter,
Yeah.
right? And so I'm a firm believer, but it does not come without fight. It does not come without challenge. It does not come without internal and external conflict that you have, and boundaries that if you are not in the right place, if you do not have the right tools, if you don't have the right support system around you, a
Mm.
lot of men never make it out of those spaces because they've never had an example, or they've never had the freedom or the desire or even the will, because the blinding of hopelessness. And that
Mm.
goes back to my original point. When the most dangerous man is a man that has no hope. And so when he has no hope, and he can literally see nothing beyond his current circumstance. And then he has this narrative, this internal conflict, and then the internal critic that continues to nag and eat away at his soul, at his will, at his mind. Some men they feel death is the easier option than to continue to deal with the challenges of their past, their present, and they don't even see a future. And so that man, um, that 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 broken boy that became a broken man, until he comes into relationship with a trainer, or with a coach, or with a preacher, or with a prophet, whoever your person is, um, that can pull you. And hence this goes back into my philosophy: healing is the journey, wholeness is the destination. That can literally impart to you a new realm or new framework for living, and what the future can look like.
Hmm.
and then help coach an individual through that and hold their not maybe start holding their hand and then it goes to coaching. But I'm listening to you, and I was saying I was getting emotional because most men never get to the point of being able to even get out the gate to even be able to think in even have these levels of conversation.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
just not a thing.
Yeah.
They're trying to figure out survival. They're trying to the basic necessities, eating, sleeping,
Yes.
you know, trying not to die, right? And you know, and just abroad, period, or even protection. I feel like every boy wants to be seen, heard, and safe. And when those things are not in place, it creates an imbalance. It creates an imbalance. So I think as a trainer, you have a unique and a coach and somebody who is a futurist and I'm loving it. I'm like, damn, this is amazing. Um, but I'm also in the same breath. I keep hearing you say, and I'm going to be picking this apart. Man, I wish everybody could have this fun. And for some men, when they've been physically abused their whole life, they're just trying to figure out how do I how do I make it to tomorrow,
Yeah.
right? I remember part of my work in Chicago when I first moved here. I worked on O Block, and it's one of the most dangerous spaces in Chicago to be in. And I remember driving down the street one day, and there was a drive-by shooting, and it was a whole bunch of kids literally standing at the bus stop, and they had killed somebody, a guy that was just sitting there minding his own business, right? And these kids were literally just trying to go to school, and they saw the man get shot. They saw his blood on the pavement. No, nobody took them to the therapist. Nobody sat with them. They got on the bus and they went to school. They stepped over the blood and went to school. And when that is your reality and you don't know anything else,
Yeah.
when you and here's the challenge, here's another story in my book. I talk about one guy. Um, he was a twin, and when his mom would go to work, um, and I'm going individual because the individual stories also speak to the collective experience.
Yeah.
Um, there was one who he was a twin, and when his mom would go to work, their stepdad, who was a gang member, would take him in the basement and physically molest him for from the age of almost 7 to 13 years old, literally every day, and tried to tell his mom, but because the dad was a gang member, right, a gang leader, he would beat up the mom, and she felt if she left, right, then they would like she'd have nowhere to go. And so anytime and one time, as the dad is stepdad is physically molesting this boy, he's saying to him, I'm going to make you like boys. I'm going to make sure like and he's telling his mom these things are happening, but mom is too afraid that she's going to be out on the streets because now she has to and can't provide for them. And even if she's on the streets, that he may unalive all of them, right? And living in that type of environment, um, and the work that I do on a consistent basis, I see some amazing stories of resilience, major stories of men who are overcoming obstacles, who are defying the odds. And our conversation, I'm asking myself, who has done the work, do I have the freedom to speak, to even think in this space? You know, and I know I'm the one helping the other people journey. So it's like for a lot of these men, when this is all that they can see, um, and that is and data. Even let's just deal with sexual trauma, right? Abuse, the work that I'm most known for. 80 to 85% of boys and men in urban communities have experienced some form of sexual abuse, sexual trauma, has been exposed to sex prematurely, and some research even shows that boys as early as age of 4 are already showing pornography addictions, and that is shaping how they see themselves, how they see the world, and it is embedded in it becomes embedded in their psyche and in the framework of who they are. And yes, it can be undone, but it's almost like, if you ever had locks and you try to unlock dreadlocks, it's like damn near impossible, unless you just cut it all the way off. Um, it's not impossible. So I'm curious on how we can bridge these spaces, because in order to create this reality, this new world, right, this new perspective, we have to, number one, address the societal the societal norms, ideologies, thoughts, power systems, that because they are intentional, that create these issues, these challenges, but then also the investment in healing the men and the women who have had to walk and navigate these spaces. Because I'm thinking about, like, I'm thinking about you, and I'm like, I'm sure you are an amazing trainer, right? Like, and I'm thinking, like, what is your rate to come train with you? Like, I don't know what your rate is,
Yeah.
right? Or even the gym that you train at.
Yeah.
Um, but I'm sure because of your level of experience, right? Like, it's an investment,
Yeah.
right? And I'm sure it's a great return on the investment.
Yeah.
But I'm thinking of some, and this is not to give sob stories, but I think of some men who, you know, like getting into a train, like going to the gym, something like, and training with the trainer is so, not that it's not a desire, but there's so many roadblocks to even getting as it relates to finances or as it relates to whatnot, and not to say all men are victims, right? Never saying that. But I think, if we're going to address these issues, we have to address all of them. And I think statistics and this data proves that this is not just a small issue, that these issues are societal, like, norms that are often not acknowledged and dealt with in silence, or something, or these men suffer in silence. And it's not by coincidence that 50% of these populations are behind bars. 50%. If not, right? It's crazy. It doesn't make sense.
Yeah. 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 All right. So, okay. Okay. All right. Yeah, I'm in complete agreement with you, and the way that I see this whole experience of life going, let's say we're all on the same train and time is moving forward, and we've got advancements in technology, advancements in science, advancements that indicate that in a couple years you can take a pill and live 10 years longer, and cancer becomes curable and stuff like that. The way I see this trajectory is that the rich people of the planet Earth are going to be fine. you know, they're going to be in positions where advancements are at such a high level where they're just living every single day in sunshine. They might even get to the point where they can click a button and have, like, get rid of rain. You know what I'm saying? But my huge concern is that people who are in poverty in today's age will remain in poverty because rich people will not give a shit because they're fucking sitting pretty. And that is a huge concern for me, just as like, where does this concern come from? I don't see the difference between a rich person and a poor person. I see a person is born in one house and then another person is born in an entirely different section of the world, and to me they're the same. Like, they have the same value. So I think it's not fair, literally, for a certain, especially a marginalized group, to be living the life of luxury, heaven on earth, where the majority of people are in a position where they're being oppressed, they're being sexually abused during their childhood, and they're in environments that do not breed success and prosperity and abundance and love and support. So, if we're not the ones focusing on this, I don't know who the hell is.
Yeah, and I want to acknowledge a comment. I don't think what he's saying is that it is the rich person's responsibility to fix these issues or to. I don't think that's what he's not saying that. But I think what we are saying is that there has to be a collective restructuring and acknowledgement of unjust, inhumane systems and working definitions that create structures that dehumanize a group regardless of race, right? All right. If they were purple, right? Those issues have to be these systems have to be addressed in order to create true equity.
Yes. Okay. So let's get into some world building real quick because I can definitely tell that you're locked in. All right. So I'm actually basing a lot of my strategy off of a Alaskan tribe called the Inuits. They live in some of the harshest environment known to man. Over in Alaska, temperatures are incredibly cold. Every day is a life and death situation due to the climate and the terrain and things of that nature. However, this tribe of Inuit people are incredibly friendly, incredibly optimistic, incredibly positive, and their parenting style does not include chastisement, punishment, negative reinforcement in any way, even though it would stand to reason due to the environment that they're raised in, which is considered stressful. You would think that they would be lashing out on their parenting style in ways that express the stress that they're currently experiencing on a day-to-day basis. But instead, they use storytelling, they use myth, and they use positive reinforcement to encourage the structure and the behavioral system of their offspring. So when I say I think of the Alaskan Inuits, I think of how can they live so peacefully in such a harsh environment, and how could we recreate that environment in the cities of Chicago or Baltimore or the inner city of LA? Community.
Yeah. Well, that's always been at the core of who we've been as people.
Yeah.
Community. It's only recent that individualism has become the day. Like even how we've always measured family, right? Like cousins and extended family, and looked out for the greater good of the of each other, um, was the key to success, was the key to forward momentum. And I think we can see that same principle in community groups that come even to America and choose community first, right? And create and build from there, right? And build from there. That's economically, socially, emotionally, spiritually, right? It's a locking in, it's an interconnectedness and a common goal. Common goal, common purpose, common language, and establish communication systems in order to make it all function well.
Does that sound doable on your end? To me, I know it's doable, but like, how does it sound on your end?
Uh, I'm optimistic.
I love optimism.
I'm optimistic. I'm a realist, too. But there's also like, can it be done? Oh, I believe anything can be done. Will it be done? That's another question, I think.
What would stop us from getting it?
Selfishness.
Selfishness?
Selfishness. I think selfishness is at the root of all sin, right?
Okay.
And I think, um, yeah, I would say selfishness. I think
Yeah.
if because
So and I feel like the solution to addressing selfishness is like, okay, So, and I'm so glad that we're talking, and I can tell that we're on the same wavelength. So, from my perspective, the current value is status, money, clout, followers, looking cool, and creating this perception that you are somebody, right? Let's say that's like the current societal structure of value, right? What I propose, and it needs to be executed at a such a impactful and emotionally resonating level that it hits the truth of what it means to be a human being, that people receive this story and understand that our values up until this point have been flawed. They have been leading us astray from connecting with what we are supposed to really care about, which is evolution of yourself, pursuing the best version of yourself, and doing it alongside your loved ones. The value of friendship. And it's funny because themes like that get explored in profound animes and TV shows and movies. However, it's not really getting explored in AR, actual reality, to the level that it actually feels like a massive movement. So it's really the strategy of how do we tell this story on a global scale? Obviously, we can start small. Every idea needs to start small. You start local, but how do we tell this story of becoming the best version of yourself, leading by example, and creating a community around you of other individuals who are aligned with those goals, and show that through that, there is a better experience of life contrasting to clout, money, fame, and social acceptance.
I think if we look at, I think, and I'm not talking about one specific religion. I think religions have done a great job of trying to do this. And what I mean by that is this common figure that is that bucks against or introduces a new value system um, that radically challenges societal norms, but at the same time brings the collective along with them.
Correct. Well said. Well said.
And and so that narrative, um, like you said, I think as if we are going to change society, I think we have to bring those, we have to look at that way of thinking and way of doing and way of being, and creating this space. It's funny, and I don't want people to think I'm into occults, right, at all, but I've been studying like cult marketing systems and how they work.
I we can that's a whole other conversation, but keep going.
Yeah, I've been thinking about that, and even that word cult and what it means and what it looks like. But what does it look like to create a set of principles, build a community, an exclusive or inclusive community around that believes in these values, has an internal definition or internal language that really creates this new reality where it is embedded in the hearts, the DNA, the culture, the language of this current generation and those to
Ooh,
come, um, and creates that new movement, creates
correct.
a new reality that will continue to challenge norms not only individually, but also collectively.
Yes. Yes.
And that takes time, right? I say, I'm like, look at Christianity, look at
Yeah.
Jesus, look at all these other, all these other, right? It's the same principle,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
Same principle.
Yeah. So my only I can't think of a better word, but my only issue, it's not really applicable, but my only issue or reservation with religion is that it divides because
It
there's not
can.
one religion. So, and yeah, fair, it can. So my solution or my alternative suggestion is, again, the great game. It's an AR video game that allows everyone to play, whether doesn't matter the religion, as long as you play by the set rules that are set forth by the dungeon master, greatest storyteller of all time. And those rules are: focus on being the best version of yourself, peak yourself, mind, body, mind, body, and spirit through the process of focusing, self-belief, imagination, and focus. Work on those three things on a daily basis. Peak yourself, and join the community.
I think that sounds beautiful. Um, like I said, I'm optimistic, but I'm also kind of like the human condition and trying to navigate that. But hey, I'm here for
Yeah, I mean, we're gonna have to attack. Like, I see you and I meeting in person and going to public schools and giving speeches and stuff like that. Like, I honestly see that for our future. When does it get executed? When we have a budget, and we're working on a budget right now. We're going to be launching an app in 4 weeks with the very intention of funding this
it. Yeah,
movement. And when you talk about cult marketing, are you familiar with the Grateful Dead?
no, but I will be.
Yeah. Grateful Dead, they had a very cool marketing strategy. They're a band, and their followers were called Deadheads, and they were like devout fans of the band. Where I mean, it got to the point where Deadheads don't have jobs. They're literally traveling in their cars from concert to concert, and like that's their entire existence. Where they believe in the Grateful Dead's message so much that that is their lives. They are just following the band wherever they go. Obviously, I don't want the great game to be that. What I want is to turn players of the great game into the best versions of themselves and have that be the experience of the game and create a community where other people can interact with the best versions of each other. Yeah.
I didn't think I was coming on here to think like this today, but I'm here for it. I'm here
Well,
for it.
because I know that you're very smart, and I know that you're very passionate about what it is that you do. So, give me some of your thoughts. So, I mean, sharing thoughts and feedback is incredibly helpful for me, so far as execution of the vision.
I would say I would still wonder how we would address the human condition, right?
Elaborate
And
on
what I mean,
that, the
what
human condition.
I believe, um, I believe that men's hearts are can be dark, right? I do believe that. I do believe, and maybe this is where just my faith shapes my perception on this matter, or and even my experience, right? I think man is brilliant, but I also believe that man can be very beautiful. Like humanity can be very beautiful. It can be very, giving, very life breathing, but it also can be dark and very evil, if you will,
Mm.
if you will, right? If you will. But go ahead.
Yeah, so I want to touch on the evil of man, right? Um, I'm coming from a place, and we can refer to the hero's journey. That's like to me, if I want to go down in history of the greatest storyteller of all time, then I focus on my favorite story, which is the hero's journey,
Yeah,
and that is told in Star
I,
Wars. It's told in Lord of the
everywhere,
Rings,
everywhere.
everywhere. That's my favorite story.
Yeah.
Other people might feel differently, but like that's my favorite type of story, right? So if we focus on the hero's journey, there's got to be a bad guy, right? I don't want to give another human the role of bad guy because my goal is world peace. And from my perspective, I have no enemies. There is no other human that's an enemy. Instead, they're misinformed. They were raised to have limiting beliefs or certain perspectives that are not conducive to a healthy community.
Well,
So, and, mhm,
I don't actually believe that anyone is. So on another note, I don't believe people are born that way. I don't.
of
I don't. I don't. I
course.
don't. I don't know. I don't believe that people desire to be that way. I think oftentimes if you look at and especially in those that in that storyline, is that oftentimes the evil person or the villain of that story is typically someone who experienced some level of injustice, and did not get retribution, did not get recompense, and now that offense has turned into bitterness, and that bitterness has turned into something else, and now where vengeance is the vengeance, and what they're really looking for is recompense. right?
Yeah.
They're looking for
Mm.
some level of payback,
Yeah.
some level of restitution
Yeah.
that they feel like they will never get. There's
Hmm.
and when that hope, like once again, when that view of that is gone, so I feel like I have to pursue it, which and and I think one movie that shows this well is The Joker. Sometimes is that I don't know if you've ever
The
seen it, but when you
Joker.
yeah, I think when you see it, the narrative is actually through his lens, and his lens, his experience, and you see the way he was brought up. You see how his mind, how he gets to this point of his mind being what it is. Um, you're like you almost can feel empathetic towards him because of his experience.
Hmm.
Now, despite what he did, like the actions from depending upon what angle you're looking at, for him, it's I'm seeking justice from everybody else. You're a terrorist,
Yeah.
terrorizing.
Yeah.
Um, and so that's why I mean, point of view is right, right. It's this is why we can't define what wholeness looks like for somebody, or define what their healing journey looks
Yeah.
like. Um,
And I kind of see where you're going, because you mentioned human condition. I asked you to elaborate, and then you mentioned the evil in humans, and then earlier you mentioned selfishness and how that can manifest in negative ways so far as how they interact with other people. If it's like a me over them kind of scenario, where in my perspective, if I get this and you can't have this, then I win, and like that is not the mentality that we are looking to promote with this reboot. Instead, the perspective should be the one that we want to realign is there's enough for everyone, and we can do more by working together. We can actually achieve more as a collective society if we are on the same page, on the same wavelength, as opposed to I want your subservience, I want to be in charge, and I'm in a position of power over you.
I agree.
So,
I
yes.
I'm here for it. I just, as a futurist, you define yourself as a futurist. I'm a historian. I just think history points to, or has pointed to, like, and regardless of what system has been created, right, or what culture or what time, like this has always existed in some form, right?
Right.
And
Right.
never, and maybe even if it wasn't intentional, right? And I think that's why in every place, it is not necessarily, it doesn't look the same, right?
Mhm.
It's not the same things that divide, right? In India, it's the caste system, right? It's in America, of course it's economics, but it's also racism, and I would say in England, it's classism, right? It's in Africa, right? It's colorism, right? It's all these other you feel me? So it's, and yes, some of these things are intentional, but somebody, some group, somewhere down the line, these I think horrific things were introduced, and it consistently becomes me versus you, and I am the one with the power, and you're not, and I'm going to continue to create, and not to not to vilify people's experience, not to vilify people, or say people cannot overcome. Um, like I and in our new world, I think it's definitely. I'll say this in the new world, I think it's definitely possible. I would just also want to intentionally create, put things in place to ensure that these types of thoughts, concepts, um, would not poison what we're trying to create, if that makes sense.
It does. It does. So, yeah. Okay. All right. Work with me here. Okay. Um, I believe in the power of storytelling, right?
Here.
And you can tell stories of the future that hasn't happened yet. You can tell stories of the past, and you can tell stories of the present. The cool thing about storytelling is that if you're talking about the future, past, or present, you can do an alternate reality that doesn't even exist in this universe and show an example of a way of life that perhaps promotes a healthier way of interacting with your neighbor and stuff like that. So what I'm proposing is within the great game, this AR video game, like that's the invite for players to play. But the story within that great game shows a reality that just seems better. You know, it's enticing. In that reality, people are chasing after the peak version of themselves, and they are building a community, and they're having fun, and they're leading with heart-centered lives, passion, and everything. Right? My storytelling ability focuses on this new reality presented in the form, whether it's happening in the future, let's say 20 years in the future, I'm telling that story right now, or it's happening like, okay, the past from, 1700s all the way up to 2025, society was leading us to this moment where there is a fracture, and the effects of this fracture has society going in one direction where poverty is still a huge issue. Minorities are marginalized and unconsidered by people in positions of power, and there is a level of division across society and humanity as a whole that does not lead to a more fulfilled future for humanity, right? That's one side of the fracture. The other side of the fracture is that our entire history of humanity has been leading us to a moment where we all need to get on the same page about the fact we need to work together. We can do more together. And we have to eradicate classism, colorism, racism, sexism in order to create a new reality that is that of evolution and focus and clarity and abundance. It's tricky, but if we show how this reality looks through narrative storytelling in the presentation of films, TVs, content, things of that nature, it has to be shot very cinematically. That's where I come in. My inspirations are people like Christopher Nolan and stuff like that. But we shoot it well, we score it well with great music, we get the best people involved with this movement, and we tell a truly compelling story. I do believe that it has the ability to change the mindset and the perspective, at least, of the people who have felt oppressed and marginalized. We can start there, and then as we build a bigger movement, we build a bigger community. The many overtake the few, and the many would be people in impoverished situations, getting empowered through our narrative, and rising into positions of leadership, and ultimately overtaking the world.
Also revolutionist.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm, yeah, I'm here for it.
It's
I'm
fun to
part.
watch you think
Why is it fun to watch me think?
because I know. Well, it's my knowledge of you. It's my understanding. Like this is important to you. So to see myself introducing new concepts to you is fun because like I see you working with it and going like, all right, how does this look? What are going to be the obstacles?
Yeah,
I see you seeing that. And I'm excited. Like this is a lifetime friendship, and you obviously understand the scope is huge. So on the one hand, yes, there's no rush because this story is supposed to play out over the course of our lifetime. But for me, there's truly a sense of urgency to make as big of an impact as quickly as possible because I do want to save lives.
yeah, and I, mm, I think that's where it's good. It's good that you said that. I don't think I've ever thought about saving lives. I've thought about healing lives, which I think looks radically
You
different.
think so?
I know so. I
Tell
think
me about it.
um, and I've imagined a where pain does not exist. not pain. I don't know if I want to say that. Where I've imagined what does a healed world look like, and I think it definitely encapsulates a lot of the things that we are talking about. But the definition of save lives versus, I think they can be synonymous, but I don't think in my head they've been synonymous. I think I've not a thought on the wavelength of saving anybody, but more so healing them from the inside out. Understanding before I can think about the external world, I need to help heal these inner worlds. Because if I can heal or create these spaces where these inner worlds are healed, I believe healed people heal people, right? Um, I believe if you heal a man, you can heal a family. If you heal a family, you can heal a community. If you can heal a community, then you can heal the world. And that's been my motto. And I think there has never been at large a system or a thought or a structure or an institution that and I will say no, but on a large scale that focuses on solely healing the man. So I've spent my most of my brain power goes to creating systems and structures that heal the inner worlds of men because it's expensive, it's costly, it takes longer time, right? It's more tedious, but it's double the reward. And so
And
I've allowed myself to think of the external because I've been so focused on understanding the internal and what needs to be put in to heal, but also to build it.
yeah, yeah. So, keeping that in mind, how would I help in healing men?
I think it goes back to some of the principles we've talked about, right? Showing up as the example, but also providing the space to hear because I think sometimes, and this could be totally a gross misconception, misunderstanding, right? I think we spoke, and once upon a time, I was in the process of getting my personal trainer's license um, because I wanted to. That was the work that I was committed to doing was internal transformation, right? Because that's what I believe trainers do. I think it's more internal transformation than it is external transformation. And I think, but part of that, the challenge that I've always had with trainers that I saw even on my many journeys of becoming a better self was trainers that did not have the capacity or the grace to understand the journey of moving from where a person is and where they need to be, and having the grace to empathize in moments, not to allow them to get comfortable, but to at least be empathetic in a moment that we create an alternative route to where we need to get you to. Um, and so I think you showing up as an example, but also doing the work with people to hear them, to see them, and to journey with them while pushing and coaching them into the greater versions of themselves. And I think that's part of the work you're already doing, right? You're already doing. And I think it goes back to humanizing their experiences. Like if you're training with somebody who's morbidly obese, right? Morbidly obese. Of course, that definition is whatever, but however they're coming to you and they're like, hey, I want to train with you. And some trainers won't, right? Because they don't see the instant gratification that they need as it relates to their time. And we want this to, and it's kind of like, when a person has created these systems, structures internally that prohibit them mentally, emotionally, psychologically, spiritually from a from journeying, right, where they feel defeated before they even get up, right? And there's not an acknowledgement to them even showing up. I think for many, that's that's a deterrent from even considering. And once they do show up, the amount of pain that they experience that a trainer who has never walked their shoes does not understand, cannot empathize with, and in some spaces can be very insensitive about it. Not to coddle, but to humanize
Man,
this experience. I think creates a version of you that can begin the or that version of a trainer can begin the process of healing, right? Of healing these individuals one day or one decision at a time. And it really, because it's really about b- building for you, I think it's about building this internal world and walking alongside you, because there are moments where you need to keep be like, all right, no, pick it up, do, let's go, we're doing this, right? And that's a part of the journey, right? But understanding that it may take some people a little longer because of internal system structures, boundaries, um, that maybe you cannot empathize with, or an individual cannot see, cannot understand, cannot comprehend because they've never walked in those spaces.
yeah, and that's why I wanted to talk to you
Yeah,
because I'm truly aware of my limited um, perspective and experience. I mean, even when it comes to my reading is based in fiction, fantasy, science fiction. That's what I was raised on. I love stories,
same here.
and yeah, and that's why I've honestly gone. I mean, I'm age 33 now, and I truly feel like I'm just now being exposed to the suffering of the world, and it hurts. Um, it feels, I feel like a bit of guilt that like I've been able to get this far in life without having to concern myself with.
And yeah, and that's and so I'm gonna address that. I don't think you should feel guilt, right? I think it's beautiful, to be honest. As somebody who walks in this, I think it's beautiful. God, Lee is freaking beautiful. Um, I want to acknowledge that. Don't be apologetic about that. No, this is what it's supposed to look like, right? This is what normal is. So don't apologize for you having people in your life that did the work to ensure that you were well. Um, but I think it's walking alongside people who didn't, and understanding what that, like the understanding what this looks like, or like what how this may have played out in their lives, and hearing that, feeling it, but also through exposure and through presence and through creating, becoming that safe space, pulling them into, showing them, exposing them to the possibilities of what can be, um, when the right work is done, internally.
Right. I love that. That's actually quite empowering. Yeah. Okay. All right. So that's really great. Um, hmm. 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 Okay. Empathy, listening, hearing, seeing, and understanding that every person's journey is different and their path to wholeness is different. Um, okay. And I would love to get your perspective on this. We have, yeah, no, let me just get your perspective on this. And like, you already know this is lifetime. This is a huge deal for me. But All right. So, do you know about neurolinguistic programming?
Yes,
Okay.
I'm
Okay.
familiar with it.
All
Not
right.
an expert, but I'm familiar.
That's fine. Um, so 10 years ago, I was first introduced to the concept of NLP through a YouTube video where, long story short, I was having confidence issues and I really wanted to be a movie star. I wanted to go to LA and become a movie star. And I went there and it was a huge culture shock because I had never left my small town in New Jersey. So then I spent like the next year back in Jersey or back on the East Coast mentally preparing to get back out there and get back on the horse, right? And there was this one YouTube video that I was like unconsciously searching for, and the YouTube video was like the path to whole brain intelligence. And I remember seeing it. I'm like, oh, that sounds interesting. I could use whole brain intelligence. I click the video. Guy starts talking, and he goes like, okay, so the path to whole brain intelligence or universal intelligence is actually quite simple. The secret is self belief. And the minute that he said the secret to whole brain intelligence is self belief, I paused the video and I was like, get the fuck out. You're
Yeah,
telling me if I just believe in myself, I will have full access to the creativity and the talent and the intelligence of my brain if I just believe in myself? That's the easiest thing in the entire world.
right.
And from that moment, specifically that moment, I was like, holy shit, I'm gonna take over the world. You're telling me like self-belief is like that's the secret to universal intelligence? I'm taking over the fucking world. And my brain has not changed since that moment 10 years ago. It worked for me because, as it was explained to close friends of mine, I was already predisposed to that information. Self belief is the key to whole brain intelligence. I've got abundance levels of self belief. So if you're telling me that's the key, okay, well, I've got the key. The question I'm working on and the question I'm looking to apply and execute is how can I provide that key to other people? Because if that video worked for me, did it work for the other percentage of people who watched it? And how can we bridge that gap?
uh, that's a good question. I think it's the same principle. It's not anything new, but I think, I'm a man of faith. We know that, but and I think it's the same principle. Love thy neighbor as thyself, right? The challenge is when I don't love myself, when I don't, it becomes a problem loving somebody else, right? Self belief, right? If I don't believe in myself or love myself enough, right? I cannot extend that into the world. And so I think with that, man, I feel like talking to you, I feel like a Debbie Downer, right? I do. I feel like I don't know when you're entrenched in the brokennesses of the world, like, you're just that's great. I but I think you definitely being predisposed and growing up in an environment, right? To hear you say, and not to say your life was perfect, but to hear you say, my dad was the man, right? Like crazy. I'm 34 and just realized who my dad was. And so, uh, like, Sean, that's not like you having the the normal, or I think what should have been like it is that is you are so that is not the norm, and I think it's becoming the norm, right? That's what research at least says, right? That we have more active fathers and black fathers involved in their children's life now, right? But historically, over the last 30 years, over the last 30 years that has not been the case, and that many people uh, and many people that's not their experience, and so you having that in abundance um, has been the downfall of many people, not having that internal compass, right? And that's not even a black issue. That's just a human, I think a human issue. Not having the existence, like not having that nurture, that nature, that environment that continues to speak, this level of affirmation. I think even when you find in the Jewish culture, right, when you have this rites of passage, this is who you are. This is what you are. This is your family, right? One of my biggest challenges has been I never had a point of reference. So I had to create it all, right? And in doing that, that's crazy within itself, trying to figure it out, right? And so my source of affirmation had to come through faith, right? It came through faith. It came through that space for me, right? You had a father, a natural father or environment that was where you saw, like my dad, and and I'm not saying your life was perfect, not by a long shot, but it's rare. It's rare, right? And one of the challenges I'm still navigating is a mother that lied to me about who my father was my entire life. So then that's an entire different level of issue where safety and concern and nurture and where it's just not there. And that's because of her own pain. So now you're carrying the pain of your parents and their failures and their challenges, their transgenerational trauma as
Mm,
well as
mm.
like it
It's terrible.
like that's the only way I can say it.
Yeah.
Is it fair? No. Is it right? No, but it's reality. Um, and so that for many it doesn't even exist.
All right. All right. So, can we talk a little bit about the concept of escapism? So, if we think of billion-dollar franchises like Star Wars or the Marvel Cinematic Universe, um, it's like, how do we feel about bringing that concept of escapism to actual reality?
I mean,
Well, Star Wars is a
right,
universe or a galaxy
right.
set far, far away, and all Star Wars IP is set in that alternate universe where there's superpowers, lightsabers, very clear indicators of good and evil, and it's very easy to understand. Conceptually, what I'm working with is taking such an overarching story with very clear themes of right and wrong, good and evil, powers, and things of that nature, and bringing that to this society as an opportunity to allow people to feel bigger and more empowered with the circumstances that life has given
Yeah.
them. But I feel like it will only work if, like, the more people buy in, the bigger it becomes. Because, like, right now, like, let's say I've been playing this game for 10 years and I'm having it's fucking dope. I can do whatever I want, live the life that I want. But because I have zero trauma to refer to, and life before I started playing the game was rather chill and smooth, then, like, I guess what I'm trying to say is, like, I need to work with people who are coming from worse positions, and I got to figure out how to work with that person's psychology
Yeah.
and to turn the key for them.
I have a question for you, Sean. Right now, if you lost everything, right? Let's say, where would you go?
Well, I started this journey in LA homeless. I was homeless for the first 4 months, and it's like I don't exist in the present if I don't want to. So my present environment does not dictate who I
Right.
am internally. It's just a reflection of, like, my current circumstances, which does not it's not a threat to me, because I'm aware of my potential and I'm aware of my abilities as a human being. So the present circumstance is never really that big of a deal.
Can I ask you a question? Why were you homeless? If you don't mind me asking.
Of course, you can ask whatever you want. I started homeless. I came out to LA. I had a culture shock. I didn't know that the city was as big as it was, and it was my first time on the West Coast. My mom bought me a plane ticket back. I flew back. I spent the next year mentally preparing to come back to LA because I wanted to, be a movie star. And then when I came back, I was supposed to move in with a friend that I had met in LA the first trip. And like the day before, he texted me saying that like his sister is in the hospital in like South Carolina. He's got to go visit. And I asked him if he left a key under the mat. And he's like, "Oh, I'm so sorry, I forgot." I'm like, "Okay, well, I'm still gonna go." And I showed up in LA with $200 in my bank, and I knew I was gonna be homeless. I was meant like I knew I was gonna be homeless even before he canceled and let me know that like I wouldn't be able to move in with him. In the back of my mind, I knew I was going to be homeless, and I was creating scenarios during that year of like I would take the train to New York and sleep on park benches to simulate the experience of being homeless, so that I wouldn't feel too jarring when I was homeless. And one of the homeboys, Dad Bod Mascot, that's where I met him at a homeless shelter. Shout out Vito. But yeah, like I chose to be homeless. It was a choice because it was part of the journey.
I think that's commendable, and I don't want to take away from that because that's freaking amazing. Um, and I think that speaks to at the core the belief in yourself, right? To be able to do that, to be able to navigate those journeys and know that this is not my exit. I'm not staying here, right? Um, and to think for some people, it's not a choice. It's not life because I choose for this to be my life. I didn't
Yeah, man.
I didn't prepare for this, and there is no plan B. I remember moving to Chicago and understanding that there was no plan B. There was nothing to go back to. There was no I'm hungry. Like can I come back home? There was no going back home because there was not a home to go back to. And for many people, that is the reality. Like and not by choice, but by circumstance. And I think that's the shift. And I think it's great that you empathize with this community because of your own experiences. Um, but I think the shift is some people they're here because they don't choose to be. It's not intentional. They just have options.
Yeah, and I would say that my biggest issue with the way that society has left us or programmed us is, to me, the entire joy of the human experience is choice. And if you remove that aspect of experiencing life as a human being, then you're getting a fraction of the entire scope of what it means to be alive.
Well, I think hope is choice.
Okay.
And when you look at it as the same, right? Or choice is hope, one of the two, whichever way you look at it. When you don't have that, right? What do you have? What are you left
Okay. So I mean I can work with that. Hope is powerful. I mean, we love hope. Hope is a very powerful emotion. So if the message is choose hope, I mean that's I can run with that.
It's not even choose hope. It's like believing, and it goes back to the power of belief. Like you said, when I don't believe that there is, I don't see it. I can't. Right. Um, I define faith as the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. Right.
Mhm.
It comes by the principle of faith comes by hearing. Right. It's and if I don't have the ability to hear what can be, I will never materialize and it become a substance that I am now hoping for.
Mm. All right. All right. So and again, this
Sean,
completely
we,
aligns.
oh my God, I gotta get off it. It's 10:44, Sean.
Oh,
I
my
gotta get
bad.
off
Yeah,
it.
I forgot that we were in different time zones. I was too locked in.
I'm,
Um,
oh my gosh, it's 10:44, Sean.
okay, all right, okay. This was great. I'm taking a screenshot because I'm gonna get back to the doll on that. Um, Yeah, this was amazing. Thank you so much,
We
and
started at 9.
please,
Ugh.
let's make this open ended. Like this isn't the end of a conversation.
It's the
So yes, correct. Could not agree more. Thank you for everyone who hopped on. Um, Whenever conversations like this, I have stuff to reflect on. So I truly appreciate your time.
How are you able to stay on Instagram live this long? Like
Well,
most people,
this is unprecedented for me. I usually keep them to an hour, but
but most people, it cuts them off at an hour. I'm like, how
well,
long?
they know not to fuck with me. Well, dude, thank you so much for your time. I'm looking forward to a bright and beautiful friendship with you.
Same here, Sean. This is gonna be dope.
All right, brother. I'll
All
talk
right,
to you soon.
talk to you
All
soon.
right.